Hello, listeners. This is Janine
and Kristen
from Henrico Casa. You are listening to our podcast, Vigilant Voices. Living life every day. Hello, listeners. So glad to have you with us on this latest episode of our Vigilant Voices podcast.
And if you've been with us for a little while, you know that we've been working through a series of conversations in our recent episodes talking about the science of hope and the 4 building blocks needed to help children embrace hope.
Yes. And I mean, I'll speak for myself, but I've really loved this series because, life can be hard, right? But we're trying to use this podcast to help all of us learn about the challenges facing children and families in order to make sure no child faces continued abuse, neglect, or trauma.
Right.
And we have been learning that hope counteracts these challenges and traumas.
Yeah. And remember, listener, hope isn't wishful thinking. It's something that can be built and acted upon.
Right. And it is also a protective factor. And what we mean by that is that hope serves as a buffer against the adverse childhood experiences that we often talk about.
Yeah.
But it does that because it protects children from the potential negative outcomes associated with the trauma they have experienced.
Right. And so as a reminder, the first 3 building blocks of hope are: first, positive interpersonal relationships, and that's with adults or peers. Second, safe spaces to live, to learn, and to play.
Yep.
And third, social and civic engagement.
Right. And so then that leads us right up to our last building block. So building block number 4, which is helping children build self-awareness, but also self-regulation.
Yeah. In other words, I'd say emotional growth.
Yeah, that's probably an easy way to
just
understand
that. Simple. And that makes me think of Emily, a young elementary school age girl we at Henrico Casa advocated for in recent years. Emily was removed from her home after an emergency hearing was held in response to concerns that her mother, who she lived with, was mentally unstable.
Yeah.
During this time, her teachers had noted that Emily's emotional regulation was a real concern.
And listener, I'm sure you understand this, but I mean, our educators spend so much time right, with children, and they're often the first ones to identify and report concerns regarding a child's well-being.
Yeah, that's so true. And in Emily's case, they weren't the only ones concerned. After Emily was matched with her CASA advocate, that advocate started gathering observations and information from other adults in Emily's life. And Emily's angry outbursts were worrying many people. And it became clear to the advocate that those outbursts, like her behaviors, were modeled after the interactions Emily was having in her own home. Her mother had these angry, violent spurts, and she was misusing prescription pills to kind of manage her emotions. And gosh, she had even shared some of those pills with Emily. And so Emily felt frustrated and almost all the time and just a little out of control. And she was just truly unable to control her anger.
Yeah. I mean, this is an example of how childhood trauma can truly disrupt a child's emotional development. Emily had a lot of issues at home. Which means that she felt heightened stress. There's just no doubt about it, right? And in this world, this is what we would call toxic stress.
Right.
And when anyone, but in this case, children are experiencing toxic stress, they have a much harder time regulating their emotions.
Sure.
And which by this age, she would or should have been able to probably better manage those emotions if she were being raised in a healthier environment.
Right. And not to go off on a tangent, but it disrupts all development, right? Like social development, cognitive development, even physical development.
Yeah. Which makes sense when you remember that trauma literally hinders brain development and disrupts the formation of neurological connections.
Yeah. And so, thinking of Emily and kids beyond Emily, how do we see that play out, right, emotionally?
Yeah.
And the things we see are that kids may struggle to express their feelings. They may not be able to withstand or handle conflict. They may not be building healthy relationships.
Yeah. And all those things are really true. But here's another good, right? But emotional skills can be learned.
Yeah.
And that's where hope can grow.
Yeah, 100%. But I would pause to say this emotional growth is a long game, right?
yeah,
It's not something that's going to happen
It's a marathon,
overnight.
yeah.
Yes. And it's honestly not always linear growth.
No, which is why sometimes we have to start small and helping children gain a sense of self-awareness and learn self-regulation in little snippets, right?
Yeah. And listener, when you're in the weeds, and I'm saying this from personal experience,
Yeah.
it can be really difficult to see and recognize emotional growth. And so we thought it would be helpful to share some positive signs of growth and development with you.
Yeah. And so something to look for is if children are playing and interacting with peers. But then in that interaction, are they showing self-control?
Yeah.
And that could be as simple as sharing a toy or I can wait my turn.
Yep.
I can use my words and I'm not going to hit or bite for attention, right?
Yeah.
Those are all normal, but early signs of emotional development, right?
Yes. And, I like that you said early signs because in a healthy kind of development progression, these would be typical signs of emotional development for a younger child.
Right.
But when children have experienced trauma, their chronological age doesn't necessarily align with their developmental stage.
Right.
And so it's not unusual for our advocates to be seeing this type of development, at an older chronological age than you would expect.
Yes. So let's see. Some other signs of emotional development as children continue to progress would be things like the ability to reflect on their emotions, or being able to process social situations.
And these are honestly skills that they need to learn.
And oftentimes they will learn them best if they're seeing healthy emotional regulation modeled for them.
Right. And that's why we're happy when our advocates are able to be a role model in this way. The children and teens CASA works with have often lived with adults who may not be managing their emotions in healthy ways.
Right.
And so their CASA advocate could be the first kind of calm, consistent adult that they've interacted with on a regular basis.
That's very true. And, as we always like to share, listener, advocate or not, as safe adults, we should all be working to model healthy emotional regulation.
Yeah, and not just modeling, but coaching it in the children as well.
For sure. Advocates can support and strengthen emotional development by engaging in conversations with children. Like, well, how did your friend react to that?
Sure, yeah.
Maybe just, well, what did you think about that? How did it make you feel, during that situation?
Yeah, it's conversation starters like those that open the door to emotional awareness.
Yeah, truly open-ended, questions to get a child talking. And, remember, we're talking about all of this in the context of hope, right?
Yes.
So how does emotional awareness and self-regulation relate to hope? When children have the ability to manage emotions and behaviors, they can respond to challenges constructively.
Yes.
And I think this is then what starts to nurture a hopeful outlook and allow their brain to be open to that.
Yeah. And what's really neat about this is that healthy emotional responses build hope, but then hope strengthens emotional development.
Yeah, this is a great example of a positive cycle.
Yeah, it is. Hope allows kids to believe in a better future, which helps them face adversity and overcome obstacles rather than being, stuck or overwhelmed. So they're like making their better future.
Exactly. And studies are very clear that hopeful people experience more uplifting emotions, which in turn improves their overall psychological well-being because it reduces anxiety and stress because they can see positive.
Yes, they can see beyond it.
That's right.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff tied into hope.
Yeah.
I saw a recent study that summarized all of this to say that hope is the, quote, cornerstone of a healthy life.
I like that. And I can also see that.
Yeah.
And this is exactly why we held this training on the psychology of hope for all of our advocates. They're working through really complex, challenging situations with children and their families. And one of the many ways they can help these children is by focusing less on the negative and adverse, but on proactively building hope through those positive experiences.
Right. And so some of the practical ways our CASA advocates support a child's emotional development are, playing games together.
Love that. I mean, games are just a simple and easy opportunity to model behavior and responses, to swings and emotions, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel when you win? But
Right.
How do you feel if you lose, right?
Yeah, that makes me think Monica Geller, but that's a whole another thing. Other ideas are to practice breathing exercises or maybe introduce a child to journaling or making gratitude lists.
Yeah, and I mean, creative outlets are fantastic. Drawing, music. You sort of mentioned, breathing exercise, so maybe meditation, right? Mindfulness.
Yeah, every one of those experiences teaches emotional vocabulary, emotional regulation, and resilience to children.
Well, and of course, this now makes me think back to Emily, Kristen. How does her story end?
Yeah, Emily did not like feeling angry all of the time.
I get that. I mean, I don't think many people would really enjoy that.
Yeah, she specifically told her advocate it was hard to control her emotions with her mom and at school. And so Emily's advocate started bringing games to their visits. And the games kind of opened the door to talking openly and role-playing, kind of role-playing responses to various scenarios. And Emily's advocate shared and practiced coping skills with her, like using that calming breathing technique we talked about and counting to 10 to take a break.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be clear. I mean, there's nothing earth-shattering about
Not at all.
the suggestion or techniques. But I mean, it just seems like Emily had never been exposed to, coping skills like these to allow her some ability to self-regulate and de-escalate.
Right. And so the combination of moving into a relative's home, which was safe and calm, and learning healthy emotional regulation was really the turning point for Emily. Her academic and behavioral performance at school improved tremendously. She was safe and secure and had the bandwidth to absorb stressful or frustrating situations without losing control of her emotions.
Yeah, and that's great. And I think what this shows us is that when kids learn how to identify their feelings, manage stress, and navigate conflict, and they're not gonna do it perfectly as they're growing up. But if they can do this, they start to feel in control of their world.
Yeah, and that agency fuels hope. That's right.
And if we think about it from a child's perspective, I think it's kind of them seeing, oh, like I'm good. I can handle big emotions, right? Or, you know what? I can solve this problem.
Yeah.
Or, you know what? I was successful in this, and so I can do new things, right?
Yeah. I love all of those. And so we're going to make that our call to action today. Listener, pick one of these sayings. I can handle big emotions. I can solve problems. I can do new things. And use whatever saying you pick like a mantra with the children in your life for the upcoming week.
I think that's great. And I think using a mantra, like any of those, or pick your own, right? But it will help the children in your life recognize their strengths and develop an internal sense of value, which, as we've chatted about, will make them less reliant on external praise because they have it internally.
Exactly. And mantras like these also teach kids to see challenges as learning opportunities, which encourages persistence and resilience.
Yeah. And gosh, Kristen, I mean, we're, I think, wrapping up our 4-part series of
I'm sad.
Of hope on this, right?
Yes.
I know.
All good things must come to an end.
True. But, each of the building blocks that we've talked about in the past 4 podcasts very clearly help children build hope.
Right. And those 4 building blocks were positive relationships, safe environments, having a sense of belonging, and emotional growth. And these 4 things are vital to building hope, but also pretty simple.
Pretty simple. So let's all challenge ourselves to move forward as catalysts of hope, because every positive experience we create truly matters.
Thank you for listening to Vigilant Voices, Henrico Casas' podcast. We have a vision for all children to live in safe, healthy homes. You can help us make that happen. Tell a friend about our podcast and find us on social media.
I believe in the better days.